Kia ora, g'day. Welcome back once again here, this time with Mr. Gareth Porter. We will not fight for Queen and country. So his response to the other person that spoke before that went over time. Just looking at the time on this one here, he's about 13 minutes as well, so he's probably going to get a few ding-dings on the bell too, I reckon.
First of all, I'd like to thank Madam President and the Oxford Union for inviting me to participate in this debate.
Sounds like an American. And he's appears to be clearly prepared. No notes, no papers, standing front and center.
Which obviously I'm an outsider to as someone from the United States. I'm not really able to speak to the phrase for Queen and country or for King and country in the same way that my friends here in the room who are British can do so. I have a very different angle of vision on this proposition. The way it has been presented, I think, in the debate so far has been that on the one side, we have the idea that some wars are just, some wars are not, some wars are worth fighting, some are not. Therefore, you cannot support the proposition because there are some wars that you must be ready to fight.
The proposition, that's the term. Voting in favor of the proposition. That's where I am at the moment, just based on my thoughts in and around it.
On the other side, the idea that all wars are wrong and for various reasons should not be supported. I have a different way of looking at this proposition. I'm not a pacifist. I've never been a pacifist. I'm a realist. But I'm also a realist who recognizes militarism when I see it. And I would like to present to this honorable gathering the following proposition: that we must view this issue not in the abstract, not as a philosophical issue, but as a question that goes directly to the present day and the issue that is presented by the wars which are being fought today, that are being planned for the immediate future, and which can be anticipated realistically over the coming decade. In other words, I'm suggesting that what is really at stake here in this issue is much greater than simply how we feel about king and country, how we feel about war. This is a matter of realist vision or lack of realist vision about the present situation that we face in terms of war. Now, I look at this issue from the vantage point of somebody who was a young man when the Vietnam War began. I had just graduated from college a few months before the first American bombs fell on North Vietnam and the first American Marines splashed ashore at Da Nang. And that year, from 1964, the school year of 1964 to 65, I spent in Washington, D.C. I can tell you that being of draft age powerfully concentrates the mind. And I very quickly became an avid student of the background of the Vietnam War as I watched the United States edge into war in 1965. And so my angle of vision is very much influenced by my understanding of the nature of that war in historical context. That war was the product of American militarism. And of course, it was a militarism that implicated Britain as well because of the special relationship. And I think if we look at the present day, the last decade of wars, we see this pattern, of course, repeated, that American militarism has once again involved Britain in 2 wars of occupation, in Iraq for 8 years, and in Afghanistan for 11 years and counting. And again, I want to make the fundamental point that what is at stake here in looking at the question of whether we should be fighting in these wars or supporting these wars is much bigger than simply how we feel about them. The stakes are much greater, much more serious than I think the news media.
I would have expected for the debate topic, we will fight for Queen and country, we will not fight for Queen and country, that there'd be clearer debating points to prove or disprove one or the other. Like, I'm not hearing it in this one. I get that he's coming from a different perspective. He's sharing some of his background, sharing the perspective of where he's viewing this debate from, acknowledging that the close relationship between the US and the UK been brought into various conflicts over the years. I'm not hearing we will not fight for Queen and country, which is the side that he's on with Ben Griffin and the other speaker. Even though I haven't heard him sort of get to specific points yet, in terms of what he's getting across or what he's trying to get across, my position is still the same in terms of we don't fight for Queen and country. Like, soldiers that go to fight, my take is they don't fight with the initial thought or at the forefront of their mind thinking, I'm doing this for Queen and country. That to me is, I thought, what the debate was about. And then for the other side that's saying we will fight for Queen and country, I would have thought that their intention and their purpose was to try to present as strongly as they could with examples of where and when and why we will, and why people will, and why soldiers will fight for Queen and country. And I haven't heard that. I've heard different examples of some wars are worth fighting, some wars are not, etc. War is bad, and horrible things happen in war, which is, lots of truth to all of that sort of stuff. But as far as addressing, in my view, the key arguments in terms of what this topic and this debate is about, I'm personally not hearing definitive answers other than we will not fight for Queen and country from my own personal perspective, and probably maybe more so from Ben Griffin's with some of the words that he shared, maybe some from the first speaker, but I'm drawing largely my conclusion from my own thoughts and some of the people that I know, and just the fact that for me, those sort of conversations for Queen and country, I've never had them. They've never come up in the discussions with guys that I know when they go to serve, like, not specifically. And if it ever has, I've never heard anybody that I know say, I'm doing this for Queen and country. Anyway.
And our governments, the British and American governments, have allowed us to know. I think the stakes involve a threat to the American and British people, which in many ways rivals or is comparable to the threat from Nazi Germany and fascist Japan during World War II or before World War II. I say this because the reasons that these wars in Iraq and Afghanistan were not just utter disasters on the ground in those countries, but much more serious problems for both of our peoples, is that they created an enormous and unprecedented backlash of support for Al-Qaeda and other Al-Qaeda-like jihadist organizations throughout the Islamic world. If you go back to the immediate aftermath of the US invasion and occupation of Iraq, we know that immediately thousands of jihadists, many of them newly minted jihadists, streamed across the border from other countries in the Middle East into Iraq and became part of the war against the occupying forces. Now, of course, what happened then was that those jihadists joined the existing al-Qaeda operatives in Iraq. And for the first time, the jihadist movement, al-Qaeda, which had no presence, no influence in Iraq whatever before the American invasion, became an important political military force in that country. And today, you can still read in the newspapers, al-Qaeda is carrying out bombings, terror bombings against Shia targets in Iraq. The problem is not ended. It is a long-term problem directly created by the American war of occupation. Now, within a matter of months after that American invasion, the director of the CIA, George Tenet, announced dramatically that al-Qaeda had metastasized into dozens of jihadist organizations around the world, which he called the next wave of the terror threat.
And that's likely true, right? I mean, the terrorists, one of their greatest resources, assets, whatever you want to call it, is time. They can just bide their time and take as long as they like, continue to infiltrate Western countries and go about legally conducting recruitment schemes and or hosting whatever it is, events and stuff that they want to host within those Western countries in line with apparent religion or religious beliefs, and just continually bide their time until such time as they want to take action. And, you know, an example of that is the Bondi terror attacks in Australia not that long ago. There will be, and there have been already, other examples in the UK, etc. There will be more examples and more situations, sadly. This is just my 2 cents for what it's worth. There will be more tragic events that will happen in Western countries. The more that you have weak leadership in positions of, acting as leaders for their country and that sort of thing, allowing those sorts of people from those backgrounds and ethnicities to immigrate into the country. Like, they're completely polar opposite cultures. And if you're allowing more and more of that to come in, and then you're bending and providing more and more funding to support the supposed Islamophobia type stuff, this is in Australia, it's just a matter of time before, if it hasn't already happened here in NZ, people so worried about being branded and labelled a something-ophobia, a racist, or whatever the term might be, and not worrying about what's best for their country, and not being able to see the impacts that it's having, and or potentially have enough brains to forecast potential negative impacts that it could have going forward or at some point in the future. It's a recipe for not very good things to happen, is where I'm going with that. So again, that's off topic of what this debate and stuff is about. But this debate has sort of been over for me in terms of the decision, unless the final speaker has something miraculous to say, or unless this guy has something more compelling to say in regards to why we will not fight for Queen and country. Like, I'm with the proposition, if that's the term that's been used, rather than the we will fight for Queen and country. I don't align to that thought or that comment or that position. Anyway.
And within 2 years after that statement by George Tenet, the U.S. intelligence community issued a national intelligence estimate, which stated that the war in Iraq had caused the people in the Islamic world, because of their opposition, their fear, and their loathing of the American role in Iraq, to support jihadism much more strongly, that it was now a much greater threat. And that...
Well, that makes sense. I mean, it's probably no different to the Russia-Ukraine war. Russia invading Ukraine. Plenty of people from all around the world, it seems, have put up their hand to go fight for and with Ukraine. Kiwis, Australians, Brits, people from the UK, Americans, like all over the place. People have gone to the Ukraine via however they've gone into the Ukraine in order to fight for the Ukraine and fight against Russia and their illegal invasion of Ukrainian land. So what he's talking about there in terms of the jihadists and the perception delivered in terms of the US, the United States, and their war on terror and weapons of mass destruction and all that sort of thing, it's not surprising that people from those neighboring countries or in and around that area have looked at it and gone, well, that's not right. I'm going to go and fight in support of the Taliban or Al-Qaeda. So, that's, I don't know where he's going with this and how it supports his argument.
That throughout the Islamic world, there was an upsurge of support for anti-American jihadism. And the former director of the CIA's Counterterrorism Center declared in 2007 that what had happened was that many people in the Islamic world had become so upset, so frightened, and so upset by the American role in Iraq that they had indeed become sympathetic to jihadism. So what we're looking at here is, again, an unprecedented problem that faces both of our people, which is the product of militarism, of a system of militarism. And I want to say that I agree very strongly with one of the student speakers this evening who mentioned the fact that this is not a matter of simply being able to choose from column A or from column B the war that you want to support or the war that you want to fight in. It doesn't work that way. We're talking about the way in which a war system operates. What we're looking at, particularly in the United States, is a system of militarism, which began during the Cold War, was obviously seen during the Vietnam era, was in something of retreat after Vietnam, but then after the end of the Cold War was resurgent, and particularly after 9/11, you see a new and more virulent phase of American militarism. So what we're up against right now is a system which is planning wars which will not have the same
wonder if this guy's going to get a ding-ding from the bell soon.
heavy footprint as Iraq and Afghanistan. True, at least it's very unlikely in the coming decade that will happen. But wars which depend on drone strikes, which depend on special operations forces going in and conducting night raids to pick out people that they believe are the enemy. Now, I would just point out two things about the kinds of wars which are now planned already, and of course in Pakistan and Yemen and in Somalia, we've already had these kinds of wars with a lesser footprint being fought. These wars are very problematic for two reasons. First of all, there's a great illusion that the CIA has promoted and the White House has promoted that the United States drone strikes can pick out target specific individuals, high-ranking Al-Qaeda officials supposedly, and do so without killing a lot of civilians. Well, I've studied the drone war in Pakistan very carefully, and I can tell you that it simply doesn't work that way. The first 4 years of the drone war in Pakistan, there were 150
Here's the first thing.
civilians killed according to the press accounts of these strikes, and only 40 people who could be vaguely described as militants. The second illusion about this kind of war is that every time you start a new war with drones, you have a clean slate, that the people in that country are going to think, well, it's just the Americans doing what they need to do, and we'll see what happens. No, that's not the way it works. There's a cumulative effect of the wars of occupation in Iraq and Afghanistan, which then
Ding, ding. You're taking too long, bruz. And I have not heard you address the part for your side. Like, that's just me personally.
The way in which the Pakistanis, the Yemenis, the Somalis.
Or I say his side, like that's the side that I'm voting with in regards to this debate, but not because of anything that he's spoken about here.
View what is going on in their country, as well as understanding that it is not the pristine, clean war that it's being claimed to be. And so in conclusion, what I would like to leave you with is the thought that we are faced with an unprecedented threat that is not theoretical. It's not a matter of our preferences. It's not a matter of simply our values. We need to recognize the reality that stares us in the face. And that reality calls for a statement of saying no to the wars that we know are already being fought or are going to be fought in the near future. Thank you very much.
I don't know, man. Like, I didn't really get much out of old mate's conversation or discussion. Gareth Porter. Yeah, thanks, but like it didn't change my position anyway. It didn't pull me away from my original position of, we're not fighting for Queen and country. So I suppose that's a positive for their side, but I don't know what value he added to the conversation. It's probably, again, just my simple brain. But anyway, let's get to the last one.